Hey guys, so in this video we'll be continuing where we left off previously with our Dribbble page. We're going to make this Dribbble page responsive. Again, just to point out, I'm not going to be focusing too much on making the icons exactly the same or the colors on the page exactly the same or any of the JavaScript stuff. For example, if I go onto the Dribbble page, we have this pop-up, we have some other, I guess like we have this again, some of the filters appearing. We're not going to be focusing on that. We're just going to be focusing on the layout and the general structure. And since Tailwind is mobile first as well in terms of its classes, let's just go ahead and start with mobile. So this is the mobile layout, and let's just start at the top. So as we can see, we have a menu icon at the top, and I'm just going to copy this header icon button class that I created, and I'm going to place it in the at the start of the header. I'm going to say it's going to have a menu. Let's just go ahead and also just collapse this page to make it slightly smaller. And the menu should be there. Oh, it's probably not there because the menu, the icon name for that particular menu is actually bars. So let's just go ahead and add that, and this page should refresh any minute now. Here it is. We can see the menu. Let's just make it even more smaller, probably similar to what we were seeing on the Dribbble page. And now we only want the Dribbble logo here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to drag the Dribbble logo out. I'm going to create a div here, and I'm going to place my logo here. And I'm going to move this whole div with the links inside here as well. And I'm going to say, okay, class flex and then items minus center, just to make it center. So let's just save this, and the page is automatically going to refresh. We see that obviously the Dribbble logo doesn't have enough space, so it's being squished. So we're going to hide these links by saying hidden. And once we do that, the links, as you can see, are hidden. Obviously, we want them to be visible on larger screen size. So I'm going to say on large, we can make it flex, but on some of the lower size layouts, we can just hide them. So we have that hidden. We have those links hidden. Now we just need the Dribbble logo, and we need the briefcase icon, the mail icon, and this graph icon. So I'm going to go here. We need to hide the upload button, and we need to hide the profile pictures. Let's just go here. I'm going to hide the upload button by saying hidden here, and I'm going to make it visible on probably the medium size screen. I'm going to say on medium, it's going to be block. Similarly, I'm going to do the same on this image as well. I'm going to go here, I'm going to say hidden, and then on medium it's going to be blocks. So let's just save and see how that looks. So as we can see, we have the Dribbble logo, we have the search bar, and we have the menu icon. So let's just go here. Well, here we don't, let's just make these similar. So on 320 pixels, I can see it doesn't really look good. So just make it 400. On 400, we have these three icons. And on my page on 400, we have the three icons. We don't need the search here. So let's just go on search and also hide this. So it's going to be hidden here. And then on small screens, on slightly small screen is basically going to be a slightly larger than the mobile screen. We are going to have it visible. So let's just do that. And as we can see here, yeah, we have the menu icon, we have the Dribbble logo, and then we have these, yeah, icons there. I also want to reduce the space on mobile. So instead of saying 2, I just want to say I want to remove the space, and this space is only going to be visible on slightly larger screens. So I'm going to say on MD, on medium size screens, it's going to be visible, but other than that, it's not going to be visible. Now, in order to center the logo, there are a couple of things we can do. Obviously, we can just have a look at what they are doing. So are they actually positioning the logo by using position absolute? Okay, as we can see here, they're obviously using position absolute. As I thought about, they're just giving it a left, right, bottom, top, 0, 0, 0, and yeah, they're just positioning it like that. And we can do the same. We can position it like that as well. So yeah, let's just go ahead and do that. So I'm gonna say here's my logo. Obviously this is hidden, so I'm going to say, I'm just going to go here and I'm going to experiment with it here. So here's our logo, and I'm going to say position absolute, and we can just say left 0, top 0, bottom 0, and then right 0. So here we have it, and then I'm going to say margin auto, and I'm going to make a display block. So as we can see, it's here, similar to what we have here. We would obviously need to supply it with a width and a height as well. So the width of this particular element is, I don't know, like what is the actual width of the logo? It is 76, so 76 pixels, and then height is going to be 18 pixels. And as we can see that now it's centered. Obviously, it's not centered in reference to the header because the header does not have a position relative applied to it. So once we do that, it's going to be centered. To me, it doesn't look good centered because obviously we have a bunch of icons here and then only one icon here. So which is why I'm not actually going to make it centered. But that's, if you wanted to make it center, that's how you can do it. So let's just actually, instead of having the logo sit in this weird position, I actually want to say that I want to have the logo right next to the menu icon. I think like that's how a lot of applications and websites do it. So let's just do that. And I think this looks much better, though obviously I just want to increase the spacing slightly. So I'm just going to say space minus x minus 2. So that's going to give an 8 pixel spacing between the logo and the bars. So I think that looks much better. And I'm going to reduce the spacing on the left and the right of the logo. So by default, we have a 24 pixel spacing. I'm going to say on mobile, I just want to have, let's say, 16 pixel spacing, and on let's say slightly medium screens, I want to have that 24 pixel spacing. So once we do that, as we can see that the spacing would automatically reduce. So yeah, I think this looks good now. I'm going to obviously apply the same spacing below as well. So, but let's just again complete the header and see how that looks. So when I expand the header, I can see on a on the medium screen, we have the search icon, and then we have these links appearing. So I'm basically going to say again, medium. Let's just go here and let's just say 1024. So basically, it already works by default. I think it looks pretty similar to this. Obviously, we want to hide the menu icon. So I'm just going to do that. Also, I need to apply some spacing in between the Dribbble logo and these links. So I'm going to say on medium screens, this spacing is actually going to increase itself to, let's say, 24 pixels. And on medium screens, I also want to hide this particular bars icon. So I'm going to say on medium screens, it's going to be hidden. So as we can see, hopefully soon, yeah, the bars are hidden. Everything looks good. Obviously, these things don't look centered. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to make these centered by saying, yeah, here, I'm just going to go here and I'm going to say items minus, well, actually items minus center is already applied here. So let's just see why these aren't being centered. So this is the, yeah, let's just go ahead here. So we have items minus center already applied to it. So we have the header and it should ideally be centered if I'm not missing something very specific. So we have the anchor, we have this, and then we have this, but this still doesn't look like centered to me. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to try some things out here. I'm going to say, so now this looks centered, but I already have this applied. So align items center is already applied to it, but for some reason, yeah, I don't know what happened. So basically I can just refresh. I didn't do anything. So for some reason, I don't know why, maybe it was scrolled down or something and I just didn't see it. So now as we can see, it looks centered on the left and the right spacing. I think that's probably a bit too much. So let's just go ahead and reduce that. So instead of, let's say, saying MD, on medium size, we want to increase the spacing. I'm going to say on the left and the right, I actually want to increase the spacing on large screens. So let's see. So we have the spacing increased on large screens, and so let's just go here and let's just expand it slightly more. So it's not even increased on large screens. I think the spacing actually is increased on extra large screens. So I'm going to go and make it extra large actually. So on extra large, so by default, we have slightly less spacing. We have the search bar icon. Let's just see when the search bar icon actually converts into the search bar. So it actually converts into a search bar on 1260 or something. So obviously we may not have that exact breakpoint. So what we're going to do is we're going to say that on slightly, well, actually we do. So Excel is actually 1280. I'm not sure if they're doing it on 1280. They're not. So they're doing it on like 1260 or something, some other value, which is pretty close to 1280. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go on our search bar. We're going to say on extra large screens, we want to hide the search bar. And instead we actually want to create a div. And I'm going to give this a class of hidden by default. And on extra large screen, it's going to become block. So it's going to become visible. So I'm going to say it's going to have an input bar, and I'm going to give it a class of width minus full, and then h minus 10. I'm going to give it a border minus, well, we can probably give it a border, and then border minus gray minus 300 or something, and then rounded as well. So let's just make it rounded, and I think probably 12 pixels should be fine, or probably even 8, I think. So 8 should be fine, rounded minus LG, and let's just go here and see our search bar. So obviously the search bar doesn't appear because we made it visible on 1280 resolution. So if you see the search bar looks good. We want to add a placeholder saying search. We also want to add an icon here, i.far.fa minus search. So we have the search bar icon here. Instead of actually saying that the search bar is gonna, so by default, obviously, if we give the search bar, it's gonna appear somewhere at the top here, which it's going to be visible soon. So I don't necessarily want to say that. I want it to overlap the search bar. So I'm going to say that, first of all, this is going to be relative, this container, and I'm going to make this absolute. I'm going to say left minus 0 and then top minus 0. So again, if you don't understand these positions, you can watch my positions video that I'll link in this particular frame. So you can have a look at that if you don't really know what's going on here. So I'm going to make it left minus 0, top minus 0. I'm going to give it a height of full and then a width of, let's say, 10 probably. So yeah, let's just do that. And once I've done that, and so yeah, so let's just have a look at the search bar icon. Let's just see if the classes are applied to it. So the classes haven't been applied for a particular reason. Obviously they're not been applied because I have like actually duplicated the class tags for some reason. So I missed that. So let's just go ahead and apply it here. And as we can see that the search bar icon should actually now be inside the search bar. So as we can see here, the search bar icon is inside the search bar. Now I can actually center it by saying flex items minus center and then justify minus center. So that's going to actually make it vertically and horizontally centered. And it should be there anytime now. Align items minus center, and let's just have a look at it. Why is it actually not centered? So flex, have I made a mistake in flex? No, the flex is there. Yeah, the flex is actually a mistake because I've actually made this particular icon this particular icon is actually taking a display of inline block, which is why obviously it's not being made a flex, because this flex property is being overridden by the inline block thing that it actually has. So what I'm going to do is, instead of actually having this height full and all of these things, I'm going to actually copy all of this, and I'm going to instead wrap this icon in a div, and instead of giving all of those properties to the icon, I'm going to give it to the div, and this should ideally work. So as we can see that it works, and I'm just going to give this particular input a padding left of, let's say, 12 or something, just so we have the placeholder a bit sitting on the right beside the icon. I think like that's a bit too much, so let's just make it 8. So yeah, now we have the search bar icon, and I think it looks good. Obviously we can reduce the color of the icon by saying text minus gray to a 500 or something, but obviously you guys can figure that out, figure the coloring out. So I think we have this particular thing done. Let's just expand it. There are no other changes to the header that we need to do, I think. So let's just see how our header looks. Obviously, if we expand it, we have this. If we collapse it, the search bar icon converts into a search bar. And our slightly more smaller screens, I can see that on on smaller screens, we want to have the bar appear or the bars appear. So I'm just going to go to my bars. Where can I see the bars? Let me just have a look. Okay, so here are the bars, and I just want to say, instead of actually hiding the bars on a medium screen, I want to hide them on a slightly larger screen. So by default on the medium screens, it would be visible. So we're going to have the Dribbble logo here, the bars here, and I think that looks good. But on medium screens, I still want the spacing to be slightly less. So I'm going to say that on larger screens, the spacing can increase, but on medium screens, it can be something like this. So now if we actually expand it, we can see this looks good. We collapse it. This looks good. This looks fine. Now coming to some of the other elements, which are these ones. So as we can see, these filters and following actually move to a separate line on slightly smaller screens. So they're sitting on a separate line. All of these tags are sitting on a separate line. So let's just do that for now. So how do we actually do that? Well, what we can say is that let's just go to this particular navigation here. So we have the navigation, and then we have a button inside of it, and then we have another button. So this is going to be slightly complicated because obviously we want to have the navigation at the bottom, and we want to have the uploads and this thing actually at the top. One more thing that I'm actually going to do is, instead of overflow hidden, I'm going to say overflow auto, just so we can actually scroll this particular thing to the left and the right. But obviously we don't see it right now because it's being cropped. So we have this navigation, and let's just see where this navigation sits. So obviously, as we can see, it actually goes quite inside. So let's just first of all figure this out. How do we actually place the buttons above? Well, one way we can figure that out is we can actually, on this flex container, we can say that the positioning of these elements is actually going to be, let's say, flex minus column or something, or probably not even column. I think like that this is fine. And instead of actually saying that this is going to be W4 minus 6, I'm going to actually say that this is going to have its particular width on a larger screen, but by default it's going to take the full width. So on the full width, it's currently taking the full width. And then we have these icons, but obviously since we don't have a flex wrap applied to the container, they're not spanning into multiple lines. So now if I apply flex wrap, let's just go here and see that the flex wrap has been applied. Yeah, the flex wrap has been applied. We have the button here. We have this particular width here. So the LG is still working. So but now if we just resize it, we can see, okay, now the actual navigation is sitting on a separate line, but we still want the button to be sitting above the navigation. So what we're going to do is we're going to say that the order for this particular navigation is going to be 3, the order for this button is going to be 2, and the order for the first button is going to be 1. So there we have it. We're going to save it, and let's just see how that looks. So now we have the upload button on the left, the filter buttons on the filter button on the right, and then we have this particular navigation sitting below. So I don't want to give it an overflow auto. I think this looks good the way it is right now. So we have this, and let's just go ahead and actually reduce the padding here. So I'm going to go to this px minus 16, and instead of px minus 16s, I'm going to say px minus 16 makes sense on, let's say, larger screens, but on mobile screens you want to have, let's say, px minus 4, which is going to be, probably px minus 4 is a bit too less, px minus 6 maybe. Yeah, I think this looks better. And on this particular screen, I also want to have some spacing between these elements. So I'm just going to give this particular navigation a margin minus top, and I'm just going to make it 4 just to give the upload filters and the navigation some spacing between them. So as we can see, we have these navigation links here similar to what we have here. We have a border between them, so I can obviously give a border here as well, a border and then a border top, and the border color is going to be border minus gray, border minus gray minus, I don't know, 200. And let's just remove this border because I just want to give the border to at the top. So as we can see, we have a border here, we have the margin here. I also want to give some spacing above the border and between the navigation. sorry, between navigation and the border. So I just did that with the padding, and now this looks good. And now let's say if we resize it, let's just see how the resizing works on Dribbble. So if we resize it on let's say 1024 screen, which is large, it actually reverts back to its original layout. So I'm going to go and I'm going to say that the ordering for this is just going to revert back to whatever it was on larger screens. So I'm going to say on large screens, the order for this particular element is going to be 4. And I think that's just, I don't have to do anything else. I can just make it 4 and it should work. So if we go to a slightly larger screen, we can see, okay, now it's again in the middle. And yeah, I just want to remove the border now. I'm going to say on larger screens, border minus none. And on larger screens, I also want to remove the padding. On larger screens, I also want to remove the margin. So I'm just going to say margin 0 completely. So as we can see that, let's just go here. And as we can see that we have some larger styles applied to it, but obviously some of the padding and some of these other things haven't been actually applied, because instead of actually applying them on the navigation, I'm applying them on the button, which is obviously not correct. So let's just go ahead and apply it here, and I think that should work. So yeah, now we have it similar to what we had before. Let's just resize it. I think this looks good. And now we just have to figure out the resizing structure of the columns. So let's just go here. On mobile screens, we have these single. On, let's say, on medium screens, we have 2 columns. On large screens, we have 3. So let's just see if we've done exactly that. So on medium screens, we have 2. On large screens, we have 3. That's fine. And on let's say extra large, we actually have 4 instead of 5. And let's say, obviously, if we keep on resizing that, if I, let's say, just completely resize it, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So on extra large, we have 4. And then on, let's say, 2 XL, we have grid minus calls minus 5. And I think that should do it. So let's go to our page. Let's just move it below. And as we can see, on extremely large screens, we have 4 right now, because obviously, because this 2XL actually works on, so yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry, we have 5. We don't have 4. And then on slightly smaller screens, we have 4 and then 3. Sorry, where did 3 go? So on 3 and then 2 and then 1. So all of this looks good. I think it looks pretty similar to what we have on Dribbble, but let's just resize it to see if we have any other issues. So we have an issue here, as we can see. This navigation obviously doesn't work properly. So let's just try to fix that. So this is obviously a flex container, and this is our navigation that's inside. So what I want to do is, by default, instead of saying that this should actually be centered, I want to say this should actually, instead of being centered, this navigation being centered, where is the navigation? So here it is. So items, let me just go back. Yeah. So instead of actually this being centered, I want to say it should actually start from the left. So let's just go here. I can actually still see. Let me just have a look at it. Sorry, I don't know why I'm doing items minus start, because that's vertical alignment. I want to say justify minus start because I want to have the horizontal alignment. So here it is. I want to say that it's going to start by default, and then I basically want to say that it's going to have an overflow hidden, because I don't want all of the options available. Even on Dribbble, we don't have all of the options available. So we have this arrow, obviously, to move to the left and the right, but we're obviously not going to have that arrow. We can still have that arrow, like, technically. So let me just go ahead and add that arrow. So let's just create a button. I'm going to add an icon, i.far.fa minus arrow minus left. So we have an arrow. Instead of an arrow, I actually want an angle minus left. And similarly, I'm going to add a button at the bottom here as well. And I'm going to say angle minus right. So now we're going to have these 2 buttons here, as we can see. So we have a button on the left, and then we're going to have a button on the right, but let's just make the button slightly larger in both places. So now the button is slightly larger on the left. Obviously, the right button is not seen because it's this navigation is actually pushing that button completely off the screen. So I'm going to say that this navigation is actually never going to. So let's just go here on this navigation. So apologies, I'm actually gonna have this navigation sit inside another container. I'm gonna make it flex and then flex -1, and I'm gonna give it a overflow hidden. So what this is basically gonna do, it's gonna say that occupy as much space is available as actually inside here, and anything that's again inside you can hide it using overflow hidden. So any overflow that actually goes beyond this container, so this particular container, just hide it. And now we have these left and right arrows, and we can obviously interact with them once we have some JavaScript involved here to actually make it work. So I think that's pretty much it. Let me just see if there's anything else. So the spacing here is slightly less, so we can just go ahead and update that spacing. So let's just go here, and we have the py -10, py -10. Let's just search for it. So on mobile, actually, I want this to be py -4, and on large screens, I want this to be a py -10. So let's just save that, and as you can see, it's much more compact now, and we have these images, and I think that's pretty much it. So obviously on here, I can see some issues with it. So the arrows, like, do the arrows actually need to be here? So I think like the arrows only need to be there once all of the links aren't available. So I think in this case, obviously they can be there. So I can go ahead and I can basically just say that this particular container is also going to have a padding left and right. So just so that it gives some spacing between the arrows and the icon. So I'm going to say px -4. I'm going to say items -center to vertically align the arrows and this navigation. So now, as you can see, it's still not vertically aligned because obviously this button isn't necessarily aligning it vertically. So I want to give this button a class items -center. So obviously it just does it slightly. So I'm just going to go ahead, flex and then items -center. So that's going to vertically align it as well. I don't think I need to give this items -center. I can just do items -stretch. And I didn't even need to do that, but let's just still give, like, we can give it for the sake of just giving it. So I think this works well now. And on slightly larger screens, for example, I think on 1280 and on Excel screens, we can hide these buttons. So I can say on Excel, I want this to be hidden, and I can do the same thing here as well. So there you go. We have the arrows hidden on smaller screen. We have the arrows visible. So here, obviously, we also don't need the arrows, so we can just hide them. So I don't think we need them here. So I want to say that they're also going to be hidden on large screens. Sorry. Yeah, they're actually only going to be visible on really small screens. So I'm just going to say that, I don't know, not on small, probably on medium. After medium, they're going to be hidden. So medium, hidden, medium, hidden. And let's just play around with it. So they're currently hidden because obviously they're not visible. So I'm just going to go here. I'm going to resize this. So as we can see, okay, the icons appear when it starts overlapping it. So if we go here, obviously we see the icons. It's working well. And yeah, that looks good. So one more thing, obviously, about the padding. As we can see, the padding isn't working well with the overflow hidden, because the overflow hidden is actually not concealing the item that's on the padding or sitting on top of the padding. So instead of, like, say, px widen hidden, let's say we just apply an mx -4. At px -4, we just say mx -4, and as you can see now, it works well because it now considers that margin when it's actually figuring out what to do with it. So I think this looks good now. I think this looks good. One thing that I do want to say is that on slightly larger screens, we want these buttons to be visible as well. So I'm just going to say on larger screens, we want them to be visible. So again, I'm going to say LG minus flex, and on extra large screens, we don't want them to be visible. So again, I'm going to say hidden, and I'm going to apply the same thing here, and let's just see how that looks. So on these screens, we have them visible, and if we just enlarge them, we don't have visible. So I think this looks good now. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's what I wanted to cover today, and this should hopefully be useful. Again, I do want to point out, do subscribe, do let me know if there's anything else you would like to see, anything that I can do to make these videos more helpful to you. Do let me know that in the comments, and do like the video as well. Thank you.